to serve his or her country, the African continent, and the world at large. My concern, or one of my concerns, which is very dear to my heart and about which I'm very passionate, has to do with the question of language. We all know that language is fundamental to the being of any human person. But we who have been colonized, language was used as a weapon against us. Language is the collective memory of a people, a carrier of their knowledge, a carrier of their culture, a carrier of their values. But colonizers used their language to hold captive our languages, our cultures, and our values. If we know what language means to a human person, we would understand that one of the greatest harms that colonialism has done to colonized people is the negation of their language, which is the negation of themselves. And subjecting them to learning languages which are alien to them and whose cultures they know nothing about. Every language is rooted in a culture. To understand a language properly, one has to understand that substance into which it is rooted, that is culture. But here in Africa and elsewhere where people were colonized, their children at very delicate age, 3, preschool age, were subjected and unfortunately are still subjected to learning alien languages to the detriment of their own languages, retarding the process of their education. Because it has been scientifically proven that any child who learns or begins formal education in L2 means second language, which is not natural to the child, does not help in the cognitive development of that particular child. And that any child who begins formal education in language 1 does everything better than the child who begins formal education in L2. One would have expected that at independence, the primary task to be accomplished by our first generation politicians was the issue of language. But some African intellectuals hide behind the fact of multiplicity of languages in Africa as a justification for the use of English, French, Spanish, Portuguese, Arabic, to the detriment of our own languages. Africa is suffering from 2 paradoxes. I'll just talk about one. And since I'm going to be here up to Saturday, my compatriots, my friends, and anybody who is interested, I will be dealing with the second paradox that has to do with politics, economics, and the rest of it. But today I'm just going to talk a little bit about language and its importance. One of the reasons why education is not as progressive as we have been on the African continent is the fact that we have been struggling with alien languages. We spend a lot of time and energy in learning them, even more than those to whom they are natural. Because when I was a student in France, In one of my classes, that was in a social psychology class, one of the professors told me, you people write French better than these young people. And I agreed with him. Because if you take their notes, you can hardly read and understand what they write. They write street language. We write book language. Mm-hmm. That is the big difference between we who learn foreign languages and those children to whom they are natural. They speak and write language that is spoken in the street. We write and speak language that is written in books. And it takes a lot of time and energy to do that. In other words, one of the reasons why education has been retarded in Africa is because of the time required and the efforts required to learn these alien languages. And it is a paradox that almost 6 decades of independence on the African continent, language issue has not been seriously posed by any leader or by only very few. I've been particular about language since my childhood, and I've been following the question of language from that up to the time I am standing here now. And it is one of the reasons why when I went to university, I decided I did 2 first degrees together. I did one in social science, my major in philosophy, and sociology as my minor. But after that, after my first degree, I abandoned it, and I continued with linguistics. Because that is the only tool I can use, or anybody who is interested in the issue, to change the language situation on the continent. Africa is the only continent in the whole world where foreign languages still hold sway in the domains of officialdom and scholarship. There are languages which are used as official languages. There are languages which are used as media of instruction from preschool to university. The only continent in the whole world. This is incredible. Sometimes I wonder whether we who call ourselves African intellectuals do ask ourselves this fundamental question. This is a crime that we have been committing against our people. And we all are glad about it, because the fact of learning these alien languages, it gives you a new status. Because it's the only language that gives you access to employment. It is the only language that gives you privileged status in your society. But our constitution, any of the constitutions in the whole of Africa, it is stipulated that we are all equal in the eyes of our law. Mm-hmm. But paradoxically, in the same constitution, it is stipulated that you cannot be a president, you cannot be a member of parliament, you cannot be a councillor, you cannot be in any elected position unless you read and write in English, in French, in Portuguese, and the rest. But nobody asked this question. We pretendly are elected by people we represent. And we speak languages that are alien to them, they don't understand. How sure are they that we are representing them? This is the paradox of so-called democracy and independence on the continent of Africa. We are representing people, thousands of people. In my country, 80% of the population are illiterate. English is alien to them. I was elected for almost 20 years. I was speaking on their behalf in parliament, using a language that they don't understand. Is it true that I was representing them? How sure were they? Because they were not understanding what I was speaking on their behalf in parliament. Was I speaking on their behalf? How certain is that? And that is for everybody who has been running in an elected position on the continent. But we hypocritically pound our chests that we are honestly representing our people. we must change. There is a need for a new revolution in Africa. One of the reasons why we have been tottering with development for decades, it is simply because we have been using a tool with which we are not familiar. Ghana and South Korea were independent almost in the same year. And at that time, Ghana's GDP was much higher than South Korea. But Korea is totally different from Ghana today. Ghana, with all the riches that it has, gold, diamond, petrol, name it. South Korea does not have that. But South Korea is today in their so-called first world. And Ghana still is totally in the so-called third world, whatever that means to them. And nobody questions that. Why is it that South Korea has developed and Ghana has not developed? It is one reason. Because South Korea used a tool which is common to everybody in the country. And we in Ghana, in Gambia, in Nigeria, everywhere else, we use a tool which is alien to the vast majority of our population. And we are happy because we have the privilege, they have no access to that privilege. For one to have been capable to speak a foreign language and write in a foreign language. But our constitution recognizes our language. South Africa, the constitution recognizes 11 languages. That is why you see sometimes parliamentarians, when you speak in the South African parliament, they are called switching between English, Zulu, and any other language. Senegal also, that is what happens there. But that is not enough. It is not a question of code switching. It's a question of sticking to the code, which is common to you and the people you represent. There is a disconnect between the child's education because the language he or she speaks in the school is totally different from the language he or she speaks at the home. The father and mother are not involved in the child's education because they are totally ignorant of the language that's being used to educate him or her. And we don't question that. Africa, what is wrong with us? It is the way we are going to do it. It is not possible. I say, and anybody who doesn't agree, challenge me.
Yeah.
It is not possible for us to move the way we have chosen. This is the bad way. Raymond Dumont was right. A French agronomist, he wrote a book in 1960. The title was 𝒊𝒏𝒇𝒐𝒓𝒎𝒂𝒕𝒊𝒏𝒈, false start in Africa. He is very right. And that is why we are still tottering with development. Is it not a paradox that Africa, the richest continent in the whole world, a continent which is in fact the birthplace of humanity, human life started in Africa and spread to the rest of the world. We should have been the light of the world. But now we are the wretched of the earth. How long are we going to remain in this? If you are not tired of being a slave, you should not allow your children to fall into that same trap.
Allah Akbar. Allah Akbar.
It is time we woke up. It is time we woke up. It is time we decided to be what we are supposed to be. We cannot continue to live in the world and want to be in partnership with people, to be equal to others, when we have hanging on our necks a foreign language. Linguistic chain is surrounding in everybody's neck, to a point that you cannot even talk sometimes. How many mathematicians are we destroying on the continent? How many philosophers are we denying? How many scientists are we denying on our continent? Because of using languages which are alien to ourselves. I'm not proud to speak the way I am speaking.
Yes, sir.
I could speak better if you could understand my language. And I can speak to you from now up to tomorrow. I will not use a single English word in my sentence. But if I ask any of you here, those of you who have never taken interest to learn your own languages, if I ask you to write your sentence now, first, the sentence will be just one word, because you would not know how to segment the composition of your sentence. So you just write one big long thing, and then you say you are illiterate. You are all illiterate. In my eyes, you are all illiterate. And this is the fear, because you don't want to accept that currently, even though you speak and write English, you are illiterate. And for us to take off for development, you need to go back to school. This is what you don't want to. I don't like military regimes, but there was one military regime I applauded. That was Iyad Barre when he overthrew the government in 1969 in Somalia. 1974, he gave an alternative to civil service. Anybody who could not read and write in Somali within a certain period, whatever position you occupied in the civil service, you would lose it. He closed the whole school system for a given period, during which they developed a writing system for the transcription of Somali. There are over 100 languages in Somalia. But fortunately, 98% of the Somalis speak Somali. So that was a big occasion for them. From 1975 to date, the only language of education and officialdom in Somali is Somali. Everything is done in Somali, from preschool to university. And recently, Rwanda was conversating between first French was official language, then English. Now they decided, seriously, leadership is fundamental to all this. They said, well, we cannot continue this way. Since the main language in Rwanda, Kinyarwanda, is closely related to Swahili, they decided to allow Swahili as the official language. And for more than 2 years now, Swahili is the language of education and administration in Rwanda. I've named you only 2 countries on the whole continent so far. Deliberately, I'm not including Tanzania, because even though Tanzania speaks Swahili and it is an official language, but English is also an official language in Tanzania. Kenya also the same. So that is why I have given my life to the development of African languages. And that is why when I came back from France, after I had tried to implement their own policy, because this was their own language policy, they choose 3 Gambian languages to be developed, used as media of instruction in schools. I worked on that, I did what that was necessary. They refused to create the materials. But since I was committed, enthusiastic, all the materials we used for 2 years were handwritten. But we cannot continue. We cannot write books with your hand and expect children to learn throughout the whole constitution. It's impossible. So I left them, I went back to London, where before even I went back to Gambia, I was given a job, research job in London, which was a fantastic research job because it was a research on all the languages of Africa, including Arabic. 3 items. First, inventory of all the languages of Africa and their interrelationship. 2, a writing system for all the languages for Africa, including Arabic. 3, a language map of Africa. The research was for 3 years, from 80 to 82. My part of the research was precisely a writing system for all the languages of Africa. But before the research, UNESCO had organized a series of conferences, the culmination of which was the one that took place in Niamey in 1978. And the experts developed a writing system they called Africa Reference Alphabet. My research group in London took that alphabet and enriched it to make it capable to write every language in Africa, including Arabic. But how many countries are using this system to develop their languages? There are a few. But it is our responsibility, we who call ourselves African intellectuals, it is our responsibility. Our education is meant to be used as a tool to develop our continent. How can we catch up? Without using this tool, we can do anything. I will tell you that Africa is encaged. You don't know it. If you care to know, the fact is that Africa is encaged. Europe will never ever let Africa develop and be like Europe. That is to their detriment. They said it. I'm telling you, the views of an European academic conference on the issue. And they were so honest to say that if they allow Africa to develop, Europe and Asia will perish. That any African country that wants to develop, you have to fight. This is honestly, the academics are talking exactly this. You have to fight. Because we will not allow you to go, because your going and here to develop is to our detriment. So we sit there and we say they give you aid, they give you grants. These are traps. Traps. If you want to pay all your loans to the who has ever listened to Ruto, the current president of Kenya? He told them if they wanted to pay all their loans, they said no. They don't pay all. You know what that means? You pay all, you become a free person. They don't want to pay you to be free. And that is why Gambia, from 1985 to date, the debt budget is 100 billion Gambian currency. When in 1994, when the former first president was leading over from the debt budget was only 2 billion. Now it's 100 billion. So, I'm sorry. I'm being kind of the way, but and for me, let me alone. There is a need for us to talk. Because this issue is always brushed aside. And this is the sickness of our continent. But since I'm going to be here up to Saturday, students, those of you who invited me, I'm available to you to discuss more seriously on these issues before I leave you on Saturday. Thank you very much.
Our hero, this year's African Heroes Night. I'd like to call upon the ASU Vice President, Muhammad.